Good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Kiesner, and we're going to talk about how to help your students survive final exams as those are coming up. So we'll be kind of pulling in some of our information from a variety of sources of things that we did for our academic success book and some of our neuroscience things and for our general test anxiety, and kind of put it together and give you some techniques that'll help your uh, help your students of whatever their whatever that relationship is. So there's a question and answer on there if you want to give me a question along the way. But we'll get this going and hopefully give you some good information there. So as I said, my name is Matt Kiesner. I'm the training manager here at Upworth, and so my job is to besides doing presentations like this is make sure our tutors know what they're doing and giving them good advice. And I also help write stuff and work on our books and stuff. So hopefully I can give you some good information today. So what we talk about is kind of a lot about attitude and mindset and how we can reinforce that with our students. We'll talk about how to use some brain science to help your students with different memory and effectively learn new information. And then we're going to talk about test anxiety and then how that applies to final exams and stuff, because that can be a student can study all the lots of time, but it's also about doing well on the day of the test. So first of all, I would talk about the sort of general idea of proactive versus reactive approach. Having good study habits is you need a right attitude about this. And so one of the best things you can do with your students is getting them into a proactive mindset where they are looking at what can I do now to influence the outcome later, right? So we have a little of a walkthrough of this. Proactive as your students know what times to do, not procrastinate, ask questions, do not make assumptions about an assignment or a test. Make sure to understand it before completing it, and then this is going to lead to a track record of success. So proactive students can ask those questions and know what's going on. Where a reactive student is honestly, it's easier to be a reactive student, right? It's easier to wait till something bad happens and then deal with it and then hope that the teacher will give an extension or allow you to redo something. So and so especially when getting into to finals and stuff and the things that count for a lot of the grade, it's really important to make sure that that a student is on top of it, because final exams are very difficult to get redos on, especially if a school has grading deadlines. There's really no time to do something else, especially going into winter break. And so one of the things we did in this book that we wrote over the pandemic, which is this Appleruth Guide to the Academic Success book, is one of the authors in that, is that we talked about that trying to connect academics with other aspects of a student's life. And so, your students already know how to be proactive in some things, right? Whether that's, sports or in art or in creative endeavors or in gaming or in social things, being a TikTok influencer or whatever. So, there's behaviors in that they do for the stuff that they enjoy that's outside of school. And so, you think about what instill those behaviors, and then how would they apply to academics, and then what are the things you're doing to engender success in other aspects of their lives. And then obviously there's going to be a struggle in all of these things, and so when mistakes will happen and failures will occur, at least in a hopefully in a temporary state, right? But a growth mindset says, okay, what can I learn from this? Okay, I made a mistake, but what can we improve upon? Where a fixed mindset is, of course I made a mistake because I'm bad at this, right? And so in school, it's really important to have a growth mindset, because that's one of the key factors of school, right? Is trying to improve with the to grow your mind, right? So the how do you like approach it with changing that attitude? And one thing you can do as supporting your students is giving them the like the reinforcement they need, right? um and not and making sure to communicate in a positive way, right? Of, oh well, yeah, that went, it's okay, so that test went well, so why did that happen? What can you learn from this? What information are we missing, like where we find that information, right? And kind of build by using questions like, students should be able to figure out what they need, right? And it's okay to struggle. So I would like this art that of a it's like starting with airplanes and getting to really good models and stuff. And so, and it's getting better is part of of growth, and that's not just in terms of academics or in terms of like in childhood, right? I mean, it's any kind of skill, you gradually improve upon those. So, and then I wanted to borrow from the academic success book and talk about our study plan. And so this obviously is useful for studying for finals. I think it applies 100% on there. So we were trying to come up with a clever way, a little acronym to remember what makes a good study plan. So this we came up with GOAT, so the greatest study plan of all time. So we'll go through what the four aspects of there, and how you can help a student to use this sort of plan. So the G's for goals. So it's one thing to try to learn U.S. history or learn chemistry or learn math, right? But versus having a goal. So if you're doing U.S. history, you can ask, okay, my goal is to figure out what were the events that led up to the U.S. entering World War I, right? Like that's specific, right? Versus just like learning history. And so having a specific goals is going to be important there. It's also great to have a like a safe goal, like that you should hit at a certain point, and then have a stretch goal on there. So, and if a student's having a hard time trying to determine those goals, especially when looking over a chapter, is that pretty much every textbook that's been written anytime recently is going to, when each chapter, they're going to start with the idea, and then very early on they're going to have a bunch of questions, and then there's like the questions that you should be able to answer through that chapter. And so one of the great ways is okay, my goal is to learn the answers to these questions. Let's think of it like in those terms. And then O is for organization. So obviously being organized, and this is organizing not only in terms of time, right? Like setting time for study, not just doing it this weekend, right? Whatever. Hopefully, you can encourage students to use a calendar in some aspect, whether it's a paper calendar or Gmail calendar, Apple calendar, I mean, or whatever, something that their school provides. Some schools like Microsoft Teams or something like that. But to get them into establishing a time like this, this morning on Saturday morning, I'm going to to study these things. I think that's important to keep it from being just so nebulous, especially when you think of things as weekends, as just I'm going to get done this weekend. Well, when is that going to be, right? And then you create a routine. So if you like, it's good to have a place for study. I know that a lot of teens like to study in their bed, because it's comfortable and stuff. That's the brain science is pretty against that, in that it sends your body mixed signals. It's actually better to only use your bed for rest and sleep, and not for other things, because if you start making the bed your primary place of conducting all your business or all your studying or all your hanging out online or whatever, is that your body doesn't associate the being in bed with time to rest. And so what can happen is that when you're trying to study, you could fall asleep, and when you're trying to fall asleep, like you can have difficulty doing that. And so it's better to have a space. And so if the student is your child under your house, encouraging them to have a workspace is going to be if they haven't already, and something that is like designated only for that. It isn't necessarily their, gaming PC station, right, or something where that is going to have like too much mixed stuff. So the boring room I'm in is my work room. So I don't hang out here per se, right, in my own house, right. So this, I sit down in my comfy chair, my and do my work. So but that routine will help with focus, because like understanding that there's something to be done, and then make sure that you also have what you need, right? And this, for pencils, paper, calculator, textbook, whatever is needed for that assignment, right? And then again, add it to your calendar. And the A in GOAT is for attention. So multitasking does not work well. And really, that if anyone is capable of multitasking, like that is debatable. The most people, basically, you're splitting your attention rather than doing two things done at once. You're just kind of like going between two things. And so like trying to, watch Netflix and, study physics is not a good idea. And it would be better to, just to spend the time focused on studying, and then have that be something where and then enjoy the Netflix later, right? And so getting rid of those distractions, maybe it's putting your phone on airplane mode or something to reduce notifications or something. If you're on studying on a computer, being able to limit tabs is also good. There's plenty of programs to kind of keep you locked into one thing. Even this can make tabs for and I've been using this on my computer, of like you can take a tab and you can put windows in that tab, and so you can have the tab for a certain like intuitive, I need for this, on this department I click here, and and so on. But that's also good for like kind of making it a little more forbidden to go to certain things, right? If you, because it's like it's in your free time tab, right? Then you shouldn't be using it then. So, and then short break necessary. It is good to to do something else, but hold yourself to it, or hold them to a time limit. So no one watches YouTube for like 5 minutes, right? So understand that like if what you use in that break time, if it's something that tends to drag on, like have limits on, where it tends not to have a limit on how long you're watch it, that's not going to be a good break time, right? So and we all know, we're all savvy that like all social media exists to keep us engaged with that social media, right? So especially for those as parents, being aware that okay, that it's good to have a break, but it's something that like really gets you linked into and focused on social media stuff is probably not the best break. And then last one there is for T is testing. So remember I said at the beginning of the goals is that the textbooks tend to have questions at the beginning. So once the student has read through the chapters, like test like and actually ask questions like, can you answer those questions? And so if you're trying to support them, like this is an opportunity for you to get involved, right? Where you can it's okay, all right, maybe ask them, go over the test, ask them to explain it to you. And so if you're able to explain something and teach it to someone, that shows real understanding. So being supportive in that way, I think it can be really helpful for students, and make them feel confident that they actually understand this. So they, let them be your teacher, right? And if they struggle, and then it's okay. Well, why don't you review that chapter again, and tomorrow night, or in an hour or something, you can try it again, because then that's like growth mindset on there. So the GOAT: goals, organization, attention, and testing. We found that that's the most effective for like a study plan, and that really works throughout the year. It's not just for finals, but certainly it's more important when you have limited time on this. And so one thing, I kind of open-ended questions like, how can you encourage students to study efficiently, right? Or be more proactive in their study plans. I don't want to say that there's a universal answer here, especially in a parent-child relationship. I know that can be very complicated, right? Where there are some kids that are, they rule followers and they'll listen to your advice, and there are many kids that won't. So this is as a professional tutor, I feel like I'm good at threading the needle through where I get the student to agree to the behavior they need to do that the parent wants, but without making it seem like that's the parent's that I am I'll say a tool of the parents, but that sounds weird. But someone who is working for the parents' goals, right? I think I'm pretty good at talking to students in a way that they don't feel like it's a top down, right? That I'm telling them what to do. And so I would, I don't think I have an answer for all this and all parent relationships. I've worked with over 1,500 kids at this company alone, so I've definitely seen a lot of different dynamics. But I think it's something to consider, what's going to be effective in there, because I don't know that a top-down approach is always going to be the best for all students. And then talk about how do we memorize stuff. So if we understand some some basic neuroscience stuff, and then we're going to go real light on this, so it's not going to get real sciencey, I promise. But just like these are, we're going to go over the conclusions of neuroscience and understanding this, because one of the key things here at Alperuth is that we're very much coming from an academic place, and going from Jed's PhD in educational psychology, and that we would take all that the intense science stuff, but try to translate it into something that is actionable and easy to understand. So don't worry, I'm not going to get into all the parts of the brain or anything like that. So but if we do understand some memory, and then we can support our students to do better in this, especially during the final exam time. So memorization, we're not our brains are not like a bunch of a filing cabinet of cards. It's more like a net of interconnected ideas, right? And so when we're trying to understand something, it's very difficult to understand a concept by itself. But if we can start seeing how other concepts are related, we can start creating a connection across. So that would be the best way of thinking about it. And so the two that will create connections on there. And so good behavior is this 24-hour review trick. I think this one's really great. So if you learn something new, and then 24 hours later, or within 24 hours, you review it again, then you are more likely to remember it. But it really is if you wait longer, then there's more information will be lost. And so they've done plenty of studies of this, looking at you're reviewing with 24 hours later, then 48 hours later, and 72 hours later, with no review in between. And those who waited 72 hours later remembered very little of that initial advice. And so trying to get that kind of the attitude of making sure to review, because especially on exams that are cumulative, where you really have to pull all the information, it's important to think of it as how do you keep knowing that stuff, right? Because I think that a lot of students have this mindset of just well, I learned that and I took the test on that, and then now I never think about it again, right? And then you get into these final week of the semester, right? So but this 24-hour review trick of small continual review is going to be a lot more effective on there. So now, will that work on stuff that was taught in September for a December final? I mean, probably that part's lost, but we can we can move ahead and try to succeed on that. So, and then we want to talk about this idea of working memory. So, working memory is just like this idea of like you can kind of remember the short term. It's it could be like it could be the code to get into the building. It could be the and so because we're constantly getting so much information, and that our brains have to kind of toss information away, because those who have perfect memory are usually pretty impaired by that memory. Like they don't it takes go through and figure out like how do we encourage memory, because the problem is that we don't intentionally forget, right? When our brain decides to delete memory, we're not cognizant of it. Like you can't just sit there and go, okay, I would like to delete that memory, right? If anything, our brains work quite the opposite, where that might be the only thing you think about for a while. So when studying, you need to get that information into your working memory, and there are ways that we can do to improve that. Because one other thing we should understand is that people have different capabilities with working memory. Working memory is a skill and an ability, much like how fast you can run, or how high you can jump, or how much can you lift. And everyone's going to have a base. But here's the thing: is that just like with physical training, is that no matter where your baseline is, you can improve upon that by doing certain patterns. And so we can definitely make our working memory better, no matter where it is, right? So if you're thinking about like your students, think about like or does need a lot of repetition, right? And if it's the latter, then this is going to be even more important. So what's going to be really helpful is the idea of forced recall. So forced recall is like when you're made to think about something again. So it's why teachers have to ask questions. And I think the students oftentimes think because they don't think that they read the book, right? And so it's they think of it just as a receipt of doing the assignment, but really, and I'm sure there's some truth to that, but if without being asked to think about it again, it's going to be difficult to remember a lot of these things. So a lot of times forced recall comes from outside. It comes from externally, right? Where it's the teacher asks a question. Those that are really good at studying, what they learn to do is to create forced recall internally. So if you read something and then ask yourself, what did I just read? And then force yourself to like write down a note on that, right? And I think the forcing and the physical doing is really important, because you may kind of understand it sort of nebulously, but if you actually have to organize words and put it together, like that's a much stronger level of meaning. So so that's like the big secret to like learning things quicker on there. So is forcing yourself to think about it and then like create a small summary for that. So that's definitely a good trick. It's also like it goes back to the question at the beginning of the of any chapter in any textbook, is that that's giving you an ability to to have those questions pre-done. So. And then seeing how they're connected is really not going to be lead to any kind of comprehension. So we need to sort of reinforce these ideas. And so if we're able to link ideas together and see how they're connected, and this could be geometry formulas, this could be historical events, this could be different words in a foreign language, anything like that. And then we can start understanding them together. And so for memorization techniques, that is a way to help remember these things, because again, we don't tend to think of things as like just as straightforward definitions. And so giving a story or a background, or some sort of like something that's catchy is helpful, right? So we have, like, there's some classics here, some greatest hits. So we've PEMDAS, right? We got an acrostic there. So Katoa is a way to remember all trig functions. And then here's mnemonics is kind of a weird one to spell. So I always remember that M comes before N in the alphabet. So that's how you spell mnemonic. You put M first, then N. And that's my little trick to, so I have a mnemonic to spell mnemonics. And there's all kinds of ways on this, right? And so you acronyms and acrostics, right, are on there. Rhyme and alliteration. A lot of knowledge before literacy was based on rhyme, or they're memorable, right? Because you like, people still needed information, right? So the red sky in the morning, so take warning. Red sky at night, so it's light. Like that one is a classic for sailing. So, or even creating associations and narrative, creating personification of a word, like that kind of stuff can be useful as well. And so there is mnemonics, as long as you remember the information correctly. So it's for students that are creative about things, like try to encourage that, to like have some fun with studying that information, right? And making stories and stuff helps. Like, there is value in that, right? So I would definitely encourage that for students, as long as the information is correct. So if you have all these pages of notes, get some highlighters and then like try to code them as like they make sense. Where for history stuff, like maybe one highlight color gets for people, one for events, one for like concepts or vocabulary, right? So for math, they want for formulas, you want for like terms and stuff, and so you can kind of go through and and start seeing the patterns of this, because that's going to help build those connections, right? It's a little more fun, right? Because you get to do some coloring, more or less. So that part's good. And then for midterms and finals, like again, is that creating questions and having forced recall this, what happened, when did it happen, like asking questions about things and so I think this one is very history related, but it also works for chemistry. What is this molecule, why did it form, what features does it have, that kind of stuff. So and then right under those answers, do that forced recall thing on there. And then it's going to be about time management, right? So that knowing how much time you have, so making sure that the exam schedule, and it can support maybe 2 to 3 exams per day, and those are going to be set. So you're going to know that okay, on December 14th is my French exam, and also my pre-calculus exam, right? So in being able to help study for those, right? And then set up a schedule and plan for that. So setting up times to study, I think, is a really good idea on there. And then encourage them to learn about the exam. So this goes back to being proactive, right? So what is the exam going to entail? Is it going to how many questions are there? Are they types of questions? Are they going to be multiple choice? Is there going to be partial credit if you get some of the steps right? That would be more for math and science, right? Is it going to be written? Does it need a thesis? I'm trying to end. Encourage them to kind of mildly pester about what the exam's going to entail, right? And understand those things and get that information. And then I want to talk a little bit about study sessions. So I'm talking here like a group study session going together, because I think that those are they can be good or they can be really bad, and I think it really depends on like the students. And so make sure that everyone's there because they want to do well on the exam, and they're not just seeing this as a social session, right? So if their friends and stuff, like you might want to curate that somewhat, because there's nothing worse than a study session that's just, turns into nothing, right? And I recall some from like high school that helpful. So it may not be the best friends may not make so much of a social interaction there, right? But I can't say that they're all exclusively that way, right? So I would just be critical of those, but not necessarily, I wouldn't forbid them. And then, I think having a structure session is going to work better. So like put together an effective study session, so perhaps that you can give some guidance on there. And what would be the best ones would be, okay, let's come into with this person going to be the expert on this chapter or this concept, and then kind of presents the group, right? And so doing that kind of like, rather than just everyone going in and like no one really knows what they're talking about, and try to figure these things out, because that's going to be disorganized, right? And it's going to go against a lot of the other ideas we have in there. And then for exam week, like good sleep is going to be important. So discouraging students from staying up till like 4 a.m. to study for the exam is, I would recommend that. Making sure that that keeping it reasonable, and I know that can be difficult, especially at some of the horror stories my students tell me on there. But being proactive can hopefully reduce the need to stay up for really late to finish that paper or to finish studying for this. Don't let them skip breakfast. The brains function on energy, and food provides energy. So protein is one of the best brain foods. So making sure that like they have a meal that's appropriate in that. So anything that's high in protein is going to be the best on there, because trying to take an exam on on an empty stomach, it's going to be rough on them. Make sure they have what they need, right? So there's no stress on there, whether it's they're all the materials, they go in prepared. If it's like open note, then make sure that they have like the one sheet of paper they can write all the notes on. Make sure they have that and stuff, or whatever they need. So. And then getting into some positive affirmations, like giving them support of like hey, like you studied hard, like you'll do fine, like you deserve to do well. That's the one thing I like to say for my students. It's like you deserve to do well if you did the hard work. So that can be like giving them that little last positive statement really can really help with that. So which kind of goes into our next topic, which is testing anxiety. So surely test anxiety is a thing, and really from when I do SAT ACT testing, I would assume that there's some level of testing anxiety. I think it's better to sort of assume this, right? Because testing anxiety is real, and it is something that is like it is a biochemical response to a threat. It's not made up. It is that's why there's a lion there. It is coming from the same like the neurological responses would be like if you encountered a lion in the wild. And so it is physical, and it does affect heart rate and blood pressure and stuff. All these things do increase. So it's not just something that is pure psychology, right? There is a physical manifestation about that. So I want to finish with talking about those things here. So there is this like there actually is a healthy level of anxiety, which is what means that like this when you care, right, you want to do a good job, right? Where if you have really low anxiety, it's like it creates it creates indifference, right? You're like, it doesn't really matter. And then there's definitely unhealthy anxiety, right? So we have a kind of a bell curve here. So it's okay that they feel a little nervous there, but if like as long as it's not like they're they've spiraled into there, we have a very silly statement there. So So, we want to make sure to kind of get there. Like there is a sweet spot there for sure. And then, encourage your students to develop an inner coach. And so part of when I'm working with students, I like to say, like that this is not the first day, but like, as we're finishing up, it's like, so when you get to, a math question, you're not sure what to do, just like, well, what would Matt say? Right? What would, like, what would I tell you to do? And then see if they've internalized, what I've been talking about. Right. And so, like having good internal thoughts and having a sort of internal coach where it's like, like it has a positive attitude. Like that's a lot of what support is for these things, right? And so if they can internalize them, they're going to do a lot better. But on the other side, we've drawn an anxiety monster. This is what they look like. There's a lot of science to back this up. And that all these negative thoughts, right? And so if we kind of think of there is a duality in this, right? We can we could listen to one of the, I think of the old cartoon of like the angel devil on the shoulder, which isn't a perfect fit, but there is some similarities on there. So one thing that can be good for like dealing with the anxiety monster is to name it. And so I've worked with students like, here we call our anxiety monster Rupert. So you can also let them pick their own name, and so like this is when they know that they're having those negative feelings. It's like, okay, stop it, Rupert, or whatever name they choose. There's no certainly everyone can have their own anxiety monster name, and just like get out of here, like I don't need you, like and actually being able to sort of personify it and separate it from themselves is actually is pretty helpful to see it as like kind of like an outside force on there. It does work pretty well. And then, like talking about the duality thing is right. So you listen to the coach, not the monster, right? So every situation, like there was sort of like okay, there's 5 minutes left, and then we're going to focus on this and get this done, and then the same information, 5 minutes left, and then a very negative view. And so make sure that the coach is the one that listens to that. And so feeling confident and instilling confidence in your students is definitely is going to help them, right? So that like it's good to have positive affirmation and sort of belief in yourself, and this certainly works for all sorts of testing. So, I did the studying, I know this stuff more or less, and like I think I can do well. So encouraging students to be more proactive. That certainly this is a great idea throughout life. To be the GOAT one something where I use that goals, organization, attention, and testing. Encourage effective memorization, right? Don't just don't be old-fashioned and say, oh, you just read the book again, right? We can do things more efficiently, right? Make sure to give them the support when they need, whether it's the quiet that they need to study, or the nutrition they need. Those are all important stuff. And then it's okay to have test anxiety, right? It's and how we learn to mitigate that, right? So it's nothing shameful in there, right? And then help them have a positive outlook on their exams. So hopefully that helps. So and to finish up, we're doing our happy little promo for the month. So if you're looking for some extra help on there, we do SDACT stuff, we do academic stuff. As you're getting the AP test, we do that stuff too. And then we also, if you feel that stuff that I've been talking about tonight is sort of endemic to my student struggles with the all these things, organization, of being proactive, of being like following through, of having good self efficacy and a good self-value. We also do executive function coaching here, so we have a specifically be that figurative inner coach by being a literal outside coach. I was overthought that. But anyway, so if this didn't you, please let us know, because we would love to help. So I haven't seen any questions on there, so unless someone pops up here in the brochure, I'll thank you all for hanging out, and I hope you have survived the finals exams and you get to enjoying the holiday season there. So, all right, have a good one.